Ohayou gozaimasu. Not see you next time. We're just starting. My name is John, and this is Ohayou Anime, the podcast that doesn't take place in the morning, but it is morning in Japan, so that's how we get away with it. We're going to be talking about a very specific anime today with a couple of people that I'll consider experts in the field. So we're going to be talking about Overtake. So racing anime that came out this last season and it's been wrapped up for a little while. And we're going to get into it. It's going to be spoilerific. We'll probably save some spoilers for just a little bit later. Be a little more general to begin with, and then then we'll really get into it. So first guest here is Mike. Welcome. How's it going?
Hey there. Going well. How are you?
Good. Yeah. Took me a little bit here to get YouTube set up. So once again, let everybody know we're live on Twitch and YouTube. I think X as well. I'm just out of monitors here. So
fancy.
But so make sure you check us out wherever you would like. But yeah, we've talked before on the podcast about your racing and of course your racing channel at Track Mouse. So you're here, knowing what you're talking about when we discuss a racing anime like Overtake.
Doing my best to pretend, anyways.
Yeah. Did I accidentally kick Tony, or did he drop out? I was my stuff was all messed up when we started, so I might have accidentally kicked him.
I don't know that we've ever successfully initiated one of these with me on it without having some sort of technical issue.
Really?
So, yeah.
Oh man, I apologize.
It's me. It's not you.
No. Definitely not the case. All right, here he is. Okay, Tony, how's it going?
Good. Sorry about that. I was sitting backstage and the audio was just awful. You were really crackly and broken up. I was like, okay, this has got to be a me thing. So I went and got my headphones instead.
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good. All right.
BMW
I thought maybe it was
Motorsport. Good tastes. I said BMW Motorsports. Good taste.
Oh. Yeah, you came themed up. Yeah. Nice.
Mm-hmm.
So already said we're gonna talk Overtake, a racing anime. It was nominated for Best Drama of the Year from some places, so it's something to pay attention to. But bringing up the BMW Motorsports thing, it was one of my first things I really noticed on this anime was the branding. That it was almost all the time in anime, it's not Sony, it's Pony or Sunny or something. It's every time it's a McDonald's, it's McDonald's. So it's clear what the brand is, but they can't actually say what the brand is. They can't actually use the logo. Mm-hmm. And this show is full of actual companies using actual logos. How are we getting away with that? What's happening here?
Well, some of them are. Some of them aren't. Some of them are. I think there was a Pirelli logo, but it wasn't Pirelli. It was Pinelli or something like that. So they didn't have the Pirelli logo. But yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting that they got away with it. Normally, car manufacturers are harder to get away with than a Dunlap or Pirelli or stuff like that.
I didn't realize. Not something I am observant enough to pick up on. If it says Pinelli but looks like Pirelli, I'm like, oh, this is Pirelli. That's good. That's great. I'm the guy. It's good enough for him. Yeah.
But no, also
I saw
they had the Suzuka circuit, but I don't think it was the Suzuka circuit's logo because it's not the track layout for Suzuka.
Well, but they refer to it as Suzuka, so I'd be shocked if they could use the name but not the logo.
That's true. It is true.
That's one of the things that I really liked about the show is the degree of accuracy that it seems like they went through. I don't know if the writer, has a certain affinity to to this genre or whatnot, or if they just brought in, consultants that knew what they were talking about. I'm not sure what they were, how they did it, but there was nuance in this one. Like when you watch, the Initial D sequel, MF Ghost, right?
Mm-hmm.
Half the shit they say in that is absolute. Maybe more than half, maybe 3/4. The crap that they say is just to sound cool, and it's absolute dog shit. This was legit. Interesting because your typical audience that watches Fast and the Furious or the Need for Speed movie, right? They don't give a shit. It's a detail that is not important. But this anime felt like it was more in the vein of something like, I might get hazed for this, but this was closer to something like Rush, right? Where Rush itself, seriously, was a good drama, but it was fairly accurate, right?
And they talk about Niki Lauda in this show, and it's funny that you brought that up, because as I was watching this, I think I got through probably to episode 4 or 5, and I'm like, God, this reminds me so much of Rush.
Yeah, there's definitely elements to it, and I wonder if they use that because of Rush's recent success, right? I mean, that is something, whether it's just as inspiration or if it's just to ride on the coattails of something that they assume most people have seen, right? Because I don't know what their audience really looks like, right? If they're people like me, but I sucked John into watching it, Tony, you and I, are going to be drawn towards it because of the,
motorsport,
for lack of a better term. Yeah, exactly. But I don't think it wasn't just car enthusiasts that watch Rush, right? Everybody liked that movie. Anybody that's watched it liked that movie. So I think they were trying to maybe tap into that a little bit.
Yeah, and it's really hard to, there was an interview they did when they did Ford v Ferrari, which, if you've never seen that movie, that is one of the best examples of how to make motorsports sexy. Like, how do you make motorsport movies? How do you tell a story about racing to somebody who doesn't care about cars? And the way they shot it, and the story, and the cinematography, and the soundtrack, and just everything about that movie made you excited. It was a very big movie, and I'm seeing a lot of correlation in Overtake, in this anime, where it takes place on a racetrack. Yes, it takes place in Suzuki. Yes, it's about Formula 4, and they reference other types of racing, but it's there's more to it. And it's like the motorsport is just the glue that is tying the multiple story personalities and character development in to each other. It's based around this motorsport, but the motorsport is not the main protagonist of this show. Like MF Ghost, it's about the motorsport. There is no other development in that.
There's no development period. I'm just going to go out and say MF Ghost is the biggest disappointment that I could have possibly imagined. The only thing that would have made that more disappointing is if the cars weren't actually branded cars. That's it.
Like some, what was it, San Francisco Rush type cars.
Well, it took all of the effects or all of the positives of Initial D, threw that shit out the window, and then focused on the things that nobody gave a shit about in Initial D, and was like, hey, let's make a story about that. This is the opposite. And the nice part about this show, to your point, is that it is not just the racing, right? That is a good part about it. But the most dynamic scenes, the most important scenes in character development happen completely outside of the racetrack aspect.
Yeah. And that took me a couple episodes to get into it, because I actually came in expecting a Formula One, like Drive to Survive type show.
Yeah.
And it kind of introduces you to the, this cast of characters, and it comes off like kind of goofy and loony, they're lighthearted. And then you really kind of start seeing a little bit of this struggle that, the photographer has. And like, they went real dark with his story. I was like, whoa, okay.
Yeah.
And just kind of how they tied them together around a central point where the motorsport, the aspect of this Formula 4 team and what they were doing, their success was kind of an analogy of the success these characters had in their personal growth throughout the 12 episode season.
Mm-hmm. Explain that more. What do you mean?
So the entire season, you kind of.
Oh, I lost your audio. Is it just me?
No, I lost it too. I thought it was just me.
It says you're muted. I'm trying to unmute you, but it doesn't let me. Can't unmute your guest. Your mic is disconnected.
His AirPods die.
Maybe. Usually they give you a warning on that, though. Both dead. Okay, so Mike, did you know what Tony's talking about while he figures that out here?
I don't want to put it into words for him, because I'm not 100% certain that's his perspective on what the story looks like. But I think something that kind of is in parallel with it is this show managed to do a really good job in just 12 episodes of making you care about the main characters while also really developing the side characters too, right? So if you don't happen to like one particular one, and I've noticed that with a lot of anime, right, is a lot of the good ones, right, they don't just have a singular focused character. I mean, this one technically has two quote unquote main characters. You could argue it's either the young kid or the photographer, but the two Bellissimo, Bellisoro, I can't remember because I don't know if it's real. Those two drivers have a fantastic story in and of themselves. And then the owner here, or the team principal that we're seeing on screen on the left. So it looks like it's Bellariso. The team principal for Bellariso, he and the team principal for the team that is not sponsored, right? Our main characters.
Yeah, team. For Komaki Motors.
Yes. They have a history together as well, right? And all of that comes to play and manages to tell a very coherent, well-developed story where not the entire story has been given to us, but enough of it to draw us in and make them valuable was delivered. And I think that's kind of that's part of the beauty of this show is it paced itself really, really well. If you were coming to this just to see action racing scenes a la Need for Speed, it's not the show. If you're looking for a good story a la Rush, Ford versus Ferrari, right? Some of these things that have become more mainstream, that's what you're getting out of this in anime form, I think. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree. It's, it does. I mentioned this, I think, before that a show like that we were talking about recently with Jujutsu Kaisen that feels like every fight becomes less and less important because that's all there is. This show manages to pace what is the setting of subject matter of the show, racing. It managed to make each time you really get that an important moment. It's not so you're excited for the race then, and something is on the line. Something is being told through that race, whether it's competing for a new top spot on a different team, ego versus the reigning champ that seems to have it all and have it all together, or it's competing with the elements and then dealing with remembering the danger of racing that comes from what their main character's father passing away from. So like every race means something, and so I think that makes it an important, it makes you pay attention to it. Whereas otherwise you might just oh, it's here again, because you saw it towards the end. They got way crazier with the cameras, but there's only so many things you're going to do with these cars going, the same cars with the same drivers going around the track, making it exciting if you do it too many times. So I thought they did that really well.
I think that's probably got a lot to do with what Tony was referring to, and we'll let him do that too. But how you're talking about how each race has that element for that person, like you're seeing character development for the number 2 driver, right? There's a race where he needs to learn how to drive with the pressure that he hadn't felt before, right? And he believed himself to be so amazing, but he had never felt real pressure, right? At least within the show. And so he had to learn to overcome that. And I'll say this too, the going round and round in circles. I mean, I think that's why you have Tony and I on, right? Because we're the idiots that watch the same cars go round and round on a racetrack. They turn right, they turn left, they turn right, they turn left. Sometimes they turn left and then right. And there is nuance to that we absolutely love. So most people are seeing these cars do the same thing every single time. What's beautiful about auto racing is that you're talking, these people are functioning within fractions of a second. They're functioning within inches and millimeters on the track. If you're a foot offline in this, you're losing 0.3 of a second, right? Those sound like small deals, but they're huge. Then you talk about if you are 0.1 of a second slower per corner, right? And there's 12 corners, you're 1.2 seconds behind at the end of the lap. Now, even still, when I say that to most people who haven't watched some form of racing, but even somebody who has competitively swam, downhill skied, whatever it is, any form of racing, 1.2 seconds is a lifetime, right? It is a massive difference. And then you break that down to 0.1 of a second per corner, right? And so what looks the same from the outside, on the inside, it's huge differences, and nobody can ever get it just absolutely perfect. So you're chasing that. And this show found a way to both make it exciting for someone who doesn't know and or care about that degree of nuance, and also was fantastic for somebody like me who knows exactly how small the margins they're talking about. And the show did it well and made it realistic is wild to me.
Yeah, I think that's wonderfully put. And I apologize. That was a perfect storm of technology being technology. No, I mean, that's it. It is very hard for someone who doesn't like motorsports to sit down and watch motorsports. And I like that they did show some of the racing, but it was like, maybe it was 3 minutes of the 20-minute episode, because, in all honesty, yeah, in a Formula One race, the first 10 laps are exciting. The next 20 kind of aren't, because everyone's falling into a pace. Then you get into the pit section where everyone goes in for the first pit stop. So that's when everything gets exciting again. And then it cools off. And then you get the last 10 laps, which are really exciting. But yeah, that middle ground, you can go get a sandwich or something. There's not much going to happen.
Not to the viewer, to the team, right then, Tony? I mean, to the team, now you're talking about, in the middle of that, like the 24 hours of Daytona is coming up this weekend, right? Mm-hmm. It's a 24-hour long race around Daytona, which most people know is the NASCAR circuit for oval, right? But there's an infield to it too. So what happens between those laps that Tony was just outlining there, it's all about fuel saving strategy, right? Which might sound boring, but imagine, right? You're driving 160 miles an hour and the guy comes over the radio and says, "Hey, I need you to save fuel." Okay. So I need to lift off, right? The throttle. I need to find a way to conserve that because when I'm in the throttle, I'm using more fuel. But I have to do that without letting somebody else pass me. I have to do it while also catching this other guy. I have to maintain my tires because we're on a 2-stop strategy, right, for my driving stint, right, or a single stop for my driving stint. And I'm doing 160 miles an hour and thinking about this. And there's 14, other cars within 2 seconds of me that are doing the exact same thing. Like, it's maybe not that fun to watch, but once you start to think about the small pieces to it, it's huge. Now, this show doesn't really get into that, but
no, not at all.
But they did capture the right parts of it for the regular person.
They did get into, I think, enough, but there wasn't an exposition dump. It wasn't like, we're going to catch you up on everything you need to know about this type of motorsport in 2 episodes. Yes. It was spread out throughout the whole season. I think honestly, only at the second to the last episode, there was a moment where I thought maybe this feels repetitive. Like they didn't need to explain this to me anymore. It was sort of, I think I wrote it down. Maybe a little bit repetitive about setup versus technique. I feel like we've kind of been talking about that throughout the season.
Sure.
Maybe not in as specific of terms that didn't need to be addressed again. But otherwise, I think they did a good job with that.
Yeah, I think that was meant to solidify the difference between Belleroso and the main group, the Motors group. But what was the name of the team?
Just check in here.
Komaki
Motors.
Yeah. Komaki Motors. Where they're like, it's the guy who was, the main, I guess, antagonist who didn't get hurt. He always thought that he was good because he thought he was skilled, but he also had the best car. And they're like, setup is everything. It's all about like the best teams have like all this time to do setup and have the best drivers and da. And Komaki Motors came in and they did do a setup, but it was the first time they were actually able to do a proper setup was in the last 3 episodes. They finally had the sponsorship to come in there. They did a setup and they proved that if you look at it, he was able to win on the setup, right? But he was able to put pressure on the lead group on a crap setup out of just skill alone. So it was the fact that he merged those two together. That's why he was able to win.
Well, it was really Go ahead.
Well, it's really, I like what's happening with this show, where a lot is potentially going on at once. So is not only do we get to see our, protagonist, Haruka, in like getting his sponsorship and being able to set things up better towards the end, but he's also not competing against a person that's injured. So like, not only is like, I am doing better and this other guy is like figuring out philosophically what's important to me and how I need to be perceiving racing and what I'm doing here. And then another guy that's trying to prove that he shouldn't be forgotten and he's pushing himself because he's injured. So you've got very dynamic, different things happening all at once. And it's like, it does a good job then of like, it's this story of an up and coming and from the ground up grassroots sort of thing that has a great victory then at the end. But it's not like magic, because there was something that helped him get there. And then his main competitor, one of them car damaged, the other injured. So I just like that realism to it as well. It wasn't just like, oh, this kid just like throughout the season became a miracle and just overtook the best team and all this sort of thing. There was like layers to it.
Well, and frankly, I don't need a season 2 of this.
I don't. No, I
feel like the story was well pieced together, right, and concluded. But I'm not going to turn down a season 2, and it does have enough meat on the bones there, right? Because of that, you could do a season 2 now of these 3 at full form, because none of them were right. I mean, there was a hindrance to each of them, and there probably always will be a hindrance, but you could always build up to that. What do these 3 look like at full form, right? They also, I mean, they've got the the other motorsport, they make a lot of reference to like the Super GT stuff that's going on, alongside Formula 4. So you could see him going into, so Formula 4, you generally progress to Formula 3, 2, 1, etc. So you could do that as well, right? There's a lot of places that this could go, but this was just an excellent self-contained story.
And the reason I'm hesitant with a season 2 is because your protagonist made it very obvious, right? I think, what was the main guy's name again, John?
The kid,
the driver.
Haruka. He made it very apparent that like he didn't care about going pro, which is what a lot of these drivers in Formula 4, that's what they want to do. They want to go to Formula 3, Formula 2, and eventually to Formula 1. But he was like, I just want to do it because I want to feel that feeling again that I had when I was on my dad's shoulders on the podium, and I felt that joy, that pride. I want to feel that again for myself because I got there. And he didn't care that it wouldn't take him to, the top team, and he would get up to Formula 3 or Formula 2.
Yeah, that shit goes out the window real quick. That's the stuff you tell yourself when you're down there.
Yeah,
it really is. And then the podium is addicting, and I'm going through this process myself right now, not to this extent. But I took the car from just doing high performance driver's education kind of stuff, right? And my dad used to race. He raced with the Porsche Club of America, and he was very, very successful in doing that kind of amateur racing, right? And as I've been growing up, he's always told me, like, just listen. Like, the car is great. You're having a bunch of fun. You're having, his quote always is, you're having 80% of the fun for 20% of the cost. You could have a little bit more fun, but if you want to have that 20% more fun, it's going to cost you 80% more to do it. And he's always, saying that to me with a little elbow into the ribs too, like, but yeah, you gonna do it though. And I've been happy. I've been having a blast, right? And then for shits and giggles, I joined the competitive side of it a little bit and kept telling myself, I don't care. I don't care what happens. I don't care what the results are. I'm here to have fun. I just want to see. And then the results are good enough where you're like, well, okay, well, what if I just do this little bit? Then what is it like? And then that works out, right? And you just incrementally creep up, and then suddenly you're full in, right? Now I'm looking for sponsors. Like, this is ridiculous. I could see them doing that same kind of story. I saw a lot of myself in this show. It's probably why I like it so much, because I'm going through a very similar process right now with them, and the struggles of failure that happen, and continuing to keep pushing along through those struggles and finding your reason why and finding the motivation and realizing that it's an absolutely asinine hobby and still wanting to do it, still being obsessed with it. They go through that too, but he could have that same thing. That taste of success is so addicting. And once you've had some validation that you can do it, you just want to do it more and more and more.
Keep going.
It's a rare breed for someone who's like, boxes checked, I'm out.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I understand that.
And it's funny you bring that up, Mike, because, as like, my hobby it is, when you start getting into cars, it's not
zero success in
hiding. But when you, like, cars are expensive hobbies. Like I restore cars. Like, that's what I do. That's my thing. But what's really funny is, contrary to Mike's, we always laugh about motorsports. What is better than owning a race car? Knowing somebody who owns a race car, because instead of the 80, you have an 80% of the fun for 20% of the cost. I'm having 20% of the fun for 0% of the cost. We go to these racetracks and we get to watch. I watch Mike Mike Driver. I get to go and do pit crew for the Porsche team up in Road America over the summer. You know, it's like I got no skin in the game, but I get to go and hang out with the drivers, you know, pit the cars, do all that kind of stuff. And that's, you know, in the show, that's I know I connected with like the mechanic guy, because he's like, I just want to work on the car. It's just like, yeah, it's fun. You know, it's fun to be there. There's a lot of energy there. So yeah, it was kind of cool. Like they captured a lot of that in this as well, because the guy gets so excited about like what made me laugh is when I went to. So you have the photographer, you know, his character kind of comes in, and he gets really excited that he has this grassroots Formula 4 team. You know, like he's just like, oh, what can I do to help? Can I do a sponsorship? And it's like he has no idea like the amount of money that it would take to like sponsor this Formula 4 team. But he's like really excited because he wants to be part of this world. He wants to be a part of this team. I like that really hit for me, because I remember the very first time I did the pit crew for this Porsche race team. I went up to Road America, and you get into the paddock where they have all these cars, right? All these teams lined up with all cars. It's just, it's such a different world from anything you can watch on TV. You can watch NASCAR, you can watch Formula, but when you're there and you see these people with these cars, and then you see just like these team owners and like the way they talk and the way they illustrate, like orchestrate their teams, it's like, one, it's a level of wealth that is just like, oh my God, like just a level of wealth to put a team together. And then two, just like the energy and the excitement that there's just palpable all the time, the octane, the smell of gas, the sound, the engines, everything. And I really connected with that character at that moment when he was just like, I want to be a part of this, because you do, it's so intoxicating. You're like, I have to be a part of this.
And again, it's a smart setup. That's the kind of character you need, so you can explain a lot of stuff to an audience that's in his shoes. So that's perfect. About the season 2, like I agree, it'd be fine to not have a season 2. And this, at the same time, there's clear, to me, it feels like there's a plan. You know, there feels like there is, if the demand is there, they're ready for a season 2. And with how well structured season 1 was, I kind of have confidence that they have a structure for season 2. And it can be, you can easily see how the teams then would change, right? So all of a sudden you would want to go further in this, how that hurts some people, or how, you know, there was a suggestion of like, let's join our teams together. You know, we used to work together, and well, it's not really for me, so that could force some retirement or who knows what. We also have the sort of romance connection. We have the mechanic and the track girl that he likes her, but she likes the lead racer from the competing team.
The Russell Wilson.
So,
yeah, that's just being set up to pop, isn't it? I mean, I wonder, because they sorry, I cut you off.
No, and just with the romance, I think it's again a good realistic setup. It's not, if most things about this show, they do a good job of feeling down to earth. You know, sometimes a show can get a little carried away. It's like motivations don't quite feel right. That's something I always really dislike in shows, if someone's motivations don't feel genuine, their actions don't seem to make sense. But this is not like girl likes scumbag, doesn't know he's a scumbag, and like the nice guy is into her and she doesn't realize it. This is like a nice guy is into her, she doesn't realize it, and the other guy seems like a genuine dude that's, you know, excelling in life but has his own struggles or what, you know. So it's not like this, it can't exactly be this happy, super perfect ending to whatever occurs with that relationship. It's just well done.
It is. And you said that well. I think, honestly, that character, the premier driver for Bel
So let's get his name for Bel Sorriso. Bel Sorriso. Very Italian sounding. Let's see, the first driver, Satsuki.
Yes. Yes. So Satsuki, right? What they did really, really well in this show also, for him especially, but it through all the characters, is they showed their emotion and their struggle with subtlety. It was enough for you to be able to catch it, right? But it wasn't so blatantly obvious, and it wasn't told to us. So there's moments with him in the hospital, right? And there's even moments with him driving where he's got this fantastic, boisterous, overtly positive personality. And my first inclination was, well, that's obviously a facade, right? Nobody is that wildly positive.
Right.
And they bring that up with some other characters. His number 2 believes in some degree that it is a facade. And then you learn it's not really a facade. He really does have that outlook and carry that. But there's a moment when he's in the hospital, and I can't remember it perfectly, but his hand clenches. And it's not like they zoom in on the hand, right, to make it super obvious. It's just there, and you can see him clench, and you can literally see that he is faltering with who he is. It's like the first inclination of this internal struggle where he's starting to question everything. And that happens all over the place. There's physical nuances in this show everywhere. And it's just awesome.
Mm-hmm.
It's exactly how I like to see it, because they don't just have to tell me that he is struggling to figure out who he is, where he had all of this self-confidence and suddenly isn't quite sure. You don't have to tell me that. They showed it perfectly.
Yeah, they showed that his weakness was that he didn't know who he was outside of the racetrack. Like all he knew was this life of success in Formula 4. He wanted to get up to Formula 3. He wanted to be this great driver. And when the accident happened, and they talk about Niki Lauda, they talk about, these other Formula racers, that sometimes you don't come back from those wrecks. You're done. Your career is over. You don't make it back. And I think that the point you're referencing, Mike, is that point where he's like, this can't be it. Like, I have to get back out there, because if I don't get back out there, they're going to give the spot to somebody else, and I'm not going to be able to get back.
And what am I?
And who am I if I don't have that spot? And so he kind of loses a little bit of that boisterous confidence that he had.
I don't know if I saw it as like, I don't know what I am without this. It's like, obviously it's incredibly important to him, but I didn't see it as like an identity crisis that way. I thought the important thing, and I don't remember the lesson of the 2 racers, but it was what was, ended up being an important takeaway for him was like, I was modeling myself philosophically after the wrong racer. And I can't remember what the lesson was of it, but
so he had the outlook that everything was just going to work out. Like, things were just going to play out, right? And if you stayed positive, they played out well. And he realized that despite the fact that he was remaining positive even after the incident, it might not play out well. And so that's where the philosophy shifted. So the people that they reference in the show, James Hunt, Niki Lauda, if you haven't watched Rush, right, the fact of the matter is most people are going to know their facts about this from the movie, because before the movie, this was something that happened in the 70s and folks weren't, Formula One wasn't quite the same, right? So Hunt was this happy-go-lucky, wildly free spirit, right? In every sense of the term. Good-looking guy. There's a reason that they had Chris Hemsworth playing him, right? That's the personality that this guy was emulating. And what's funny is in the movie Rush, Hunt loses his seat, right? He is being propped up by a gentleman that is funding for that race team. That falls through and he can't find a seat. And you see that positive persona absolutely crumble. And he realizes he's got to fight for something. So despite the fact that he said, I need to be like more like Niki Lauda, there was a lot of similarities to his situation. Now, instead of an injury, right, Hunt lost his race. He lost his seat, as they say. This guy is worried that he's going to lose his seat for the same reason. And that's the same, genesis for them taking things really seriously and realizing that it's not necessarily just going to all work out. So there's still a ton of similarities between him and Hunt. Lauda, on the other hand, had a horrific accident where he was caught in a fire. And in the movie, they go through a lot of hard scenes about the kind of physical therapy that he needed to go through to get back to the race seat, and did it in a very, very, very fast, way, way faster than anybody would have expected, and then had a lot of success with it. So he's saying he needs to emulate that. Lauda is calculated, super calculated. That's how he views everything. It's statistics. It's black and white. Feelings are not relevant. I don't know if that's what this guy wants to emulate necessarily.
I don't think he had the capacity to emulate it.
I don't either. But I wonder if, that's how you further develop this character. I don't know that you just make it so simple as, I thought I was James Hunt and I need to be Niki Lauda. I think you go, I was James Hunt, I want to be Niki Lauda. And then you come to the realization that, no, it was okay to be James Hunt. Revert back a little bit, right? And, or employ both positives. So.
And one thing I liked about this character, it was actually this entire team, was a lot of the time, you're kind of looking for. I did this with MF Ghost too. Is who's the bad guy? Like, who's the antagonist in this story? Who is the audience supposed to hate, right? Mm-hmm. And you come to realize at the end, there's no antagonist in this story that is present. It is, every character is their own antagonist.
Yeah.
And that like, I love that they did that, because it makes that end scene, that end race between the two top teams so much better, because you're like, they're not racing because he hates him or he wants to beat him. They're racing because they all want to prove something to themselves, and that's it. And so, I thought that was a really cool spin on this type of genre, because you don't have that like grounding of who can I hate? Who as long as I hate that guy, I'm going to be the person that comes through. It's like, no,
and it's a more realistic version, like they almost set that up to beginning, fake you out with it. Like, okay, you've got the number 2 driver on Belleroso that's always giving our main character problems. He's like yelling at him in the bathroom, so they're kind of setting these people up like we aren't going to like them. They're the competition and all sort of thing. But then, right, they add depth and we figure out more about them. And right, there's not a mustache twirling person that's out there playing dirty or whatever, it's just a much more realistic sort of drama that about it all. And I think that works out well to keep it grounded.
Mm-hmm. So John, from the outside, like, frankly, I'm trying to avoid a little bit of the conversation of like the driving styles and the nuance that went into that, and how scary accurate it was, and even down to the way that they depict the cars reacting to specific inputs, right? The passing strategies and things of that nature. Like, all of that, I just want to say, was excellent in this show. Totally grounded. But how do you feel that the show warrants that nomination for best drama, or whatever the specifics of the nomination is, as somebody who's just a fan of anime, not necessarily a fan of motor racing?
Yeah, I mean, from what I can tell, like other dramas I've seen, I would say it warrants a nomination for the year, though I haven't seen its direct competition from this last season. So I couldn't speak if it should win it or not, but it seems like it's a valid entry particularly for the PTSD path of our co-protagonist. Yes. And just the way that the show again handles character arcs and development amongst a variety of characters, just doing that well. Because often you would have your protagonist, and that's the person that has the character journey. That's what we get the character study on, or something like that. And our supporting characters are more superfluous. So I think that this show doesn't do that and handles them all well. So I think for that, it deserves a nomination. As far as like the racing specifics, obviously I'm glad that you get extra out of it and that they do that well. I really don't like shows or comics or whatever that pretends to be knowing of whatever. I mean, it's something that like people appreciate about the first John Wick. It's like, wow, this person looks like they know how to clear a room and handle a firearm, versus every other movie that pretends to have a person that can do that. And so if a show can manage that, I think that's really, really important. And I was going to ask if anything felt like hyperbole. And so, because they do a lot of explaining of like, here you have the best lap is like lap 4. Once the tires have heated up, if you get laid down some rubber on the track, they go through a lot of stuff. And then they also start getting, have you ever watched like maybe a fancy mixologist and they are explaining the certain aromas and they're doing things in a very precise method? It's a very Japanese sort of thing to do, that you're like, you do something really simple and then you explain like it's so complicated, actually, like the spirit behind it and everything. Is there anything in this show you feel is Japanese in the sense of like, I'm over complicating or over spiritualizing or over anything to the racing?
It hit the level perfectly. I mean, even the wet versus dry tires, and when they were talking about like what happens if you race on slicks, what happens when the track starts drying and you overheat your wets, so they're going to start taking wet lines, which opens you up to take the fast line. They didn't over-explain that. And that's what I liked, is that if you don't know anything about motorsports, if you've never watched a Formula One race ever, and you watch this show, they give you just enough for you to understand what the characters are doing and why that's cool or why that's like a really good approach, but not over enough where you're like, oh my God, are they just reading a technical manual to me?
It felt like natural dialogue. Yeah. Yes. It didn't feel like you were reading a Wikipedia page. And honestly, John, no, there wasn't anything that was over sensationalized. I might be biased to some degree because, I mean, you heard me talking about, right, the inches matter, the milliseconds, the tenths of seconds, those all matter. The skill that somebody has to manage the car's place on the track by a matter of inches at 110 miles an hour is just, I am passionate about that. That is why I love what this is. But they nailed it. They really did. It wasn't bullshit in any sense of the word. To Tony's point, they explained it well. The transition between wet line and dry line is great. And the slicks in the wet is something that masters still struggle with. I mean, it's a hard thing to do because not only do you not have tread that is literally wicking the water out from underneath the tire, but slick tires are designed to work at a specific temperature, right? So when you
we lost Mike now. Oh, there you're back. You're back.
So they're designed to work at a specific temperature.
They're designed to work at a specific temperature. If you talk about them getting greasy, you're talking about them overheating, right? And they lose grip at that temperature. In the rain, you have the opposite problem. In the rain, the track temperature cools. And because you can't drive as fast, that means you don't create as much friction in the corners on the tires. So as you're going through a corner, your tire isn't just straight up and down on the wheel and turning. It actually leans and twists. So the bottom of the tire actually like gets pulled. It's almost like if you just pull your skin, right? Your arm's not moving, but your skin moves, right? That's what the bottom of the tire is doing. And that creates a lot of friction. That friction is causing the temperature. If you are driving in the rain on a slick tire, you're driving slower, you're slipping. It is not happening. You're not gripping the ground as much as you are sliding over it. And when you're sliding over it with a layer of water underneath it, you're not heating up the tires. And so now those tires can't get up to temperature. So it's not just the fact that you're hydroplaning potentially. It's also that the tires are like driving on PVC tires as opposed to rubber. That's what ends up happening. Some people can find a way to manage that anyways. But the reality is slicks and torrential rain, that's bad for every single person. You'll watch the Formula One drivers struggle with that on a consistent basis. There's tons of scenes of like these Le Mans style prototypes getting caught out in the rain. And that happens. You might wonder like, well, why in the world do they allow themselves to do it? And things like at Le Mans, where your lap times are in the minutes, right? Multiple minutes. It's possible for just one part of the track to be raining and the rest of it is dry. And so then you're playing this weird game, but you see them get on slicks and rain and they just lose it. There's just nothing that they over fantasized. I mean, let's talk about the setup. Let's talk about the drastic difference that happens between a team that can afford numerous sets of tires and a team that can't. That is 100% accurate. That's where the money goes. Like a lot of times people will think, I'll go spec racing. Spec racing means all of the cars have to be exactly the same. You have to use the same tire, the same wheels, the same everything, right? But you know who has an advantage then? It's the rich guys. Why? Well, because they can afford to have multiple sealed engines. So when one of those sealed engines that they're not allowed to modify starts going down on power through regular wear and tear, pluck it out, drop another one in. Still spec, still in the rules. That's where the money goes. Same thing with the tires. Have you run 4 races and 3 practice sessions on your tires? They heat cycle. Heat cycle again is maybe the tire tread hasn't degraded, but they're just not as grippy as they used to be, right? So the people that can afford all those tires, it's going to be a big impact. And that's what these guys struggle with in here. I could go on. They hit everything. I love the show. And then it made me cry. On top of all of that, I'm sitting here watching this. I'm like, yes, I love this. This is amazing. And then I'm crying later at episode 9 or whatever, because of the trauma and the struggle that this guy is going through because he couldn't save her. Like, oh my God, what is the show?
Yeah, they went real deep. Like they did. You know, you had one guy who was struggling with the loss of his father and wanting to redeem himself in his father's eyes, right? So you had that struggle. You know, the guy who struggled with his own, am I as good as I think I am, or am I just as good as the guy in front of me? Mm-hmm. Then you had the guy who said, am I anything without this seat? And then you had the one guy that said, I got to photograph a child getting completely taken away by a tsunami because I couldn't save her. It's like, whoa, just 0 to 100 on that last one real quick.
And not just any child, right? Not just any child.
No.
A child that he actually knew.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then the fight with that family. Just like they'd be like, oh, so we're bringing the family dynamics into this. That you have this guy who just wants to say I'm sorry to the grandfather of the daughter, or the grandfather of the girl that he couldn't save, and the grandfather is the only one that actually forgives him and knows that it wasn't his fault, but their entire family's like, fuck you, like you could have saved her. But it's like he was up on a hill, you know, quarter mile away with a camera. Like, why is he the bad guy?
Right, because they're grieving and it's all they know how to do. They're looking for a reason why something would take their little girl away. They need something to blame because otherwise you can't make any sense of it, right? Mm-hmm. How do you make sense of your little girl being taken away by a tsunami? You need to find someone responsible in order to have some degree of closure, right? They're not doing anything wrong. I mean, yes, objectively, they're doing something wrong by blaming this guy who had absolutely no ability to save her, but it's a perfectly reasonable thing to find this outsider who has some tiny degree of, connection. Yes. Thank you. That you can put responsibility on while saving yourself the trouble of seeing you as the problem, right? Because you could flip that around. Why was she out there by herself? Why was she alone? Why weren't you with her? Right? But no, that's too hard to do. That is too hard for a father or a mother to sit there and say, I'm the reason she's gone, when there is a scapegoat right here.
Mm-hmm. Yep. No,
this is a racing show.
It would be interesting to see an interview with some of the creatives behind the show, maybe where they got some of the inspiration, like what their history is with, because I feel like whoever wrote it is either involved in racing or super passionate about it, because it's not so much like a lot of shows or something would be, or an author, they would write a story and then they would do a lot of research and they would pull on an expert to reference and to learn a lot about it. This feels like it was written by someone that actually themselves cares about motorsport. Mm-hmm. And then where they got the inspiration for the PTSD for a photographer, like it's, maybe you'd see that when a wartime photographer, maybe they had a grandparent or something like that in the war that saw. And so how can we do this? Or maybe it literally was a tsunami. Maybe someone experienced, and that's another thing I just wanted to bring up. This, can apply to a lot of shows, but just the way that like Netflix thinks they can make all kinds of anime everywhere. They want to, throw the anime label on all kinds of things. Even Japan themselves outsourced a lot of whatever in making these shows to other places. These are some of the moments that like are in shows because it's Japanese. And I just myself personally don't want to see that go away. To me, it's part of the soul of what anime is because Japan is so unique. And so their perspective and their attitude is just different. And so like the tsunami thing is a very real thing that the Japanese have to deal with. Motorsport, as you told me, Mike, is, and car culture is kind of a big deal in Japan. Mm-hmm. And then the way that people act, the interactions between the bosses and the people, like there's a humbleness that is there and realistic to what it means to be Japanese. The way that people over apologize and no, I can't accept. How many times they can't accept the money, but then the like social responsibility that the neighborhood sort of feels and the camaraderie around, this team also feels realistic. Like, thinking as one a little more. Mm-hmm. There's just a lot of that very Japanese-ness that is in this show and a lot of shows that they're not afraid to don't even know that they're doing, because it's just what they are. And it's the people they are and the society they have. And so I think that's a great element of this show. And just on a broader scale, I hope that doesn't, we don't water down what anime is too much, because I think it's a valuable thing.
But this was actually, honestly, probably one of the first dramas I've ever watched as an anime. I don't normally watch that genre of anime is drama, because for me, anime has always been the suspension of disbelief of reality. So it's always the goofy stuff, like the sci-fi or the, Bleach, Inuyasha, like the stuff that's kind of not really grounded in reality as much as a drama is. But I guess, since I have one shot of this show to see drama, that they did a really good job, to Mike's point, capturing human subtlety in emotion when it comes to these types of situations, these types of dialogue options that they're choosing for their characters. And I was honestly a little apprehensive of watching the show when I found out it was a drama, just because I was like, I'm probably not going to like this, because it's really hard to empathize with characters that are animated and trying to be dramatic, right? It usually what I have seen is that it goes way over onto the extreme, where it's so over dramatic that it's like almost satire.
Mm-hmm.
But this one did a really good job of riding that line of, like you said, Mike, earlier in the show, the subtlety of capturing human emotion in not very extroverted ways.
It did. There was many times I just forgot that I was watching cartoon characters, right? Animated characters, whatever you want to call them to make you feel better. Like, there was a lot of times I forgot that I was doing that. And I watched this on a weekly basis, right? Instead of getting it all in one fell swoop. I bet you if I sat and binged this as I normally like to do, I would have forgotten entirely. It just felt that real. And Tony, to your point, I think I remember reaching out to John and being like, man, what am I missing out on? Like, are all anime dramas like this good? Right? Because what we've been watching, right, since I was coerced into this. No, I'm just kidding. But what we've been watching has been shonen. And there is some character development in that. But for the most part, you can sit back and be like, it's not that deep, bro. Right? And this one, it was, at least, that's how I played off. And I don't know, I think it's cool to see that it's getting some recognition, and however small it might be, I don't know. I just think that that's neat, because motorsport is such a good way to tell these kinds of stories. There's an inherent type of person that wants to do something so stupid, and the way that it grasps people and the passion that comes through it. The folks that are out doing this kind of thing, because of the cost of it, you don't get casuals. That's not a thing. Okay. Like, casual is the guy that goes to do an HPDE, that's a high performance driving education. It's a track day, right? And God bless track days, because they are the thing that get people into this sport. I still do it. I still love just regular track days. There's something so awesome about them. But if you take that next step into it, it's just utter passion to the point of insanity. And there's a lot to draw off of that. And movies, for the most part, have failed to capture that, which baffles me, because they focus on the wrong things. That's why you get Ford versus Ferrari, you get Rush, you get, these movies that really capture people, and they're like, how? Man, all of them should be like that. All of them should be like Overtake, Rush, Ford versus Ferrari. Even the Top Gear, the Grand Tour. Jeremy Clarkson gives a speech in a 928 S4 in one of the series, and it brought people to tears too. Like, that's just, those things are laced throughout this hobby, this sport, this profession, whatever level it is for you. And it's just great to see it. It's a really good time to be a race fan right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's getting a lot of ground.
It is interesting. I mean, obviously Rush was a while ago, but Ford versus Ferrari wasn't all that long ago. Gran Turismo was very recent.
Yeah. And that wasn't even, I mean, Gran Turismo starts off really poorly and then really finds itself.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's just, I mean, is it something larger in the culture, or is it just, a lot of times you go in trends, like all the movies coming out are post-apocalyptic, or all the movies coming out, all of a sudden we have alien invasion movies, and just like this sort of loop, and you just see them. And I'm not saying there's like all of a sudden a million racing movies and shows and whatever, but it does seem like it's on an uptick. Is there a reason for that? Or is it like, because this is separated from Hollywood.
Right.
So you don't have the same people running in the same circles that are talking and get the same idea, and then separately they start writing, the next thing about some race event. I don't know. Is there anything to that?
Lucky.
Stories, I kind of capture drama as narratives of the human condition and what it means to truly be a human and empathize and deal with situations as a human being. And I think there are some situations that capture that much better than others. And for my, like you could take motorsports, you could take the Ford v Ferrari, you could take The Art of Racing in the Rain, you could take some of these other movies that we've talked about. You could also look at Apollo 13. You could look at First Man. You could look at, to some extent, Armageddon, but I'm going to put that one like way kind of like just kind of see if I can grab some of the outer people listening in, see if they've captured that one. But what it is it's how do you capture the story of people trying to accomplish something greater than themselves? And that's really what at the heart of motorsport and space exploration and these types of movies. That's what this is. The art of motorsport is achieving something greater than yourself.
But why is it racing right now? Like, to me, it's maybe
why
that.
Right now?
Yeah,
why right now
to
is
me,
it racing?
So I think
Drive to Survive.
Oh, God.
That's why it's racing right now.
Wait, what's that?
Right.
It's 100% Drive to Survive. That's why, like, Formula
Drive
One
to
had
Survive?
Yep, Drive to Survive is on Netflix, and it's a show where it actually follows the 12 teams. Yes, I almost got that. Yeah, it's 12 teams. Right, Mike?
Sure.
I think it's 12.
Besides the point. Keep going.
Besides the point. But it follows all the professional real life Formula One teams that are in circuit right now. And it's gone around for about 5 years.
Okay.
And it talks about not just the sport of Formula One, but the people who do it, the teams, the drivers, the trainers, these interactions they have. I mean, they kind of mock up the drama, but it's drawn a massive audience into this show. And on some of that, it's actually funneled it right into the actual Formula One racing season. And so there's this hype around Formula One right now and around motorsports. You're seeing IMSA, endurance racing, getting a huge boost of people who are drawn over from Formula One, because now you're finding out that one of the lead drivers in Formula One does endurance racing. So now everyone's like, oh, I got to watch endurance racing. And now NASCAR is coming out, or Netflix is coming out. They're doing NASCAR. Was something Speed? It's like Speed, the NASCAR story, or something where they're basically doing Drive to Survive, but they're doing it for the NASCAR circuit now. And what's hilarious is that NASCAR, has always had this reputation of redneck ring racing, because for the longest time, that's what it was. It was just ring racing. It was just you do races on a donut track. But now they're opening up NASCAR to have street circuits. So they're racing the Daytona inner circuit, right? They're doing Circuit of the Americas, which are not ringing. These are Formula One grade racetracks. They had their first NASCAR stock car race in Le Mans last year. And it did really well. It actually beat the crap out of like the GTD and GTEs. So it's like motorsport right now is just gaining momentum. And on top of that, you pack on the fact that you can get streaming services like Peacock, ESPN Plus, which make it so easy to watch these sports. I have Peacock mainly because I wanted it for Formula One. Football and some other ones.
Formula football.
Formula football. Sports. And they have. Oh, it was. I want it for Premier League Soccer. Actually, dead to rights. That's why I actually bought it. Was Premier League Soccer. They have an entire IMSA category. So you go and you can click IMSA and you can watch MX5 Cup racing. You can watch Porsche Carrera Cup racing, Lamborghini Super Trofeo racing. The endurance races, WEC is on that. So it's just so easy to get into this. And I think that's why you're seeing so much motorsport right now, because it is in the forefront. Everyone's talking about it.
Now it's a long time ago, but race car drivers used to be celebrities. It's not that far removed when people knew of particular race car drivers, where they went, they were followed. Max Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton, right? Try saying those names in public and people not knowing who they are, right? That feels relatively new, but it's really just coming back full circle again. It was an era where drivers died on a consistent basis. I think, I don't know the actual statistic, but it was a regular occurrence. There's the book that inspired the Ford vs. Ferrari movie it was called Go Like Hell. And in that book, they talk about the fact that the way you moved up in the racing world was because the guy ahead of you died and his seat became available that way. That's sad, but that's how you moved up. And in that era, there were these risk takers, these crazy men, right? And that was attractive to people. And so they were these unbelievable celebrities, let alone the fact that if you were prolific and you were able to survive, you were something like a mythological hero, right? And I don't know when that really fell off or why it fell off, but it did. And now it's Drive to Survive. Maybe that's the reason, but they've made racing drivers celebrities again. Mm-hmm. And I think you see Lewis Hamilton attends the Met Gala. I think that's got a lot to do with why this is as well. As far as the Japanese culture on it goes, they've always had racing heroes. They've always had legends. I don't know if that's ever fallen off. Even when maybe it wasn't mainstream, you had, in certain circles, you had people that were essentially moonlighting on the Wangan, right? I mean, that's a real thing. So there's always been like a mysticism behind it. Cars are safer these days than they ever have been. It's to a ludicrous degree. I mean, Roman Grosjean in Formula One went through a barrier in a way that would have decapitated him, and the car saved him. Caught on fire too. He was still injured, but the car saved him. They're so ludicrously safe, but deaths still happen. It's still highly risky. Massive injuries still happen. And so I think that there's a draw to that kind of risk as well. I don't know.
And there's a marketing to it too. There used to be the old phrase in America, like we talk about Chevy, Dodge, Ford, Chrysler, Plymouth, Oldsmobile. You win on a Sunday, you sell on a Monday. So people would go in and they'd be like, I want a Corvette because the Corvette won, in the Indianapolis 500 or the Indianapolis, Motor Speedway race that they had. Or I want a Camaro, or I want the Mustang. Actually, I don't think the Mustang ever won. But that's it was a huge marketing play. I don't think you'll ever see that again. I think you're starting to see, like Mike said, the celebrity of drivers, and and even like there are some celebrities now that are notorious with car culture. You had Tim Allen, you had Jay Leno, you have Seinfeld. Mm-hmm. What is his name?
Jerry
Seinfeld. Thank you, Jerry Seinfeld. Doug DeMuro is a big guy. He does a lot with. He has his own like car culture online, which I think is really funny. Mm-hmm. But you're seeing a lot of these celebrities come back to making motorsports and cars entertaining again.
I think it's got to have something to do with it. I mean, whatever it takes. If it catches on and people recognize that this is an amazing medium for telling a really, really good story, I want to hear it. I want to see it. Video games should take note, follow in these kinds of footsteps. So tired of games like Forza Motorsport and Gran Turismo thinking that there's not a coherent story that you can create. There's an amazing career progression that you could walk through. And if you can find a way to capture the emotion that these shows capture in the pursuit of greatness, that is, trying to become the best racing driver, it's not just about the effect of it being on the track. Like that is just how it manifests itself. Like you see these people's tenacity, right? Their passion, their skills, right? I mean, the sense of the feel that you have to have through your body to understand when the car is at the absolute limit of adhesion and do it and react so insanely quickly. The G-forces that these people handle, like they're freaking superheroes, man. It's unbelievable. What other, means allows a human being to travel at the speeds that they travel, to brake at the speeds that they brake at, to sustain the kind of G loads that these guys sustain? They're sustaining G loads on par with astronauts and, I won't say fighter jets, but
I think fighter jets are a little more intense.
But they're shorter. But it's typically shorter, right? And maybe not as frequent. I don't know. I'm talking out of my ass a little bit when it comes to fighter pilots, but they're literally they're doing things that are superhuman. And that, like, just find the character that goes along with that. Tell the story of struggle. There's a hero's journey in every goddamn champion that has ever been in motorsport.
Mm-hmm.
So I really like you're right. Someone should listen about figuring out how to do that in a game, because it is always frustrating if you want to play through a fighting game or a racing game. You want to go through the campaign and it's just an excuse. It's kind of like, as much as I liked it, the reason Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2 is like an excuse to get a bunch of people together to fight against each other, because we want to. Here's a fighting game, and we need to just have all these people happen to fight each other because. And occasionally it's well done or whatever, but I don't know of, and I haven't played a lot of racing games, but I've definitely never seen anyone even really attempt that in a racing game, and maybe someone has, but I can see the complexity behind that, of trying to, like, how do you, because you need to go through a story then, and that kind of requires certain results to a race.
Sure.
And if you're competing against however many other people, NPCs, and you have the guy that you got to take out for sure or whatever, that's, how do you, if you are very skilled, how do you not just beat him? And then how does that play into the story? If you are not very skilled, how do you not just end up in fifth all the time and then you're not the rival?
Sure.
So there's just a complexity there. But I think in the future with like kind of adaptive machine learning and quote unquote AI in games, I think we can get there. But that's an interesting thing I haven't really thought about.
There's one attempt at this that I think was really successful, and that was called Grid. And it was an excellent game, but it did not sell very well, to your point. I think so. There's ways that you can manufacture the situation, right? You blow a tire, right? Something goes wrong with the engine. What you can't control then is how the player reacts to something out of their control. In real life, it's a chance to persevere. In a video game, it might just be a fucking annoyance.
Yeah.
Like, dude, I'm so much better. I'm not playing this game to experience real life hardship.
Yeah. I always remember my least favorite part in The Witcher 3. I'm in this bar and this guy picks a fight with me basically. And I'm beating his ass, and the cutscene then kicks in and he just knocks me down. It's like, there was an end result that was going to happen in this event. Yeah. And I had no control over it. And I really didn't like the outcome. Yeah. Because it spiraled into other things then. And I'm like, this is complete bullshit. You just, like, this is in the game now. You took the control out of my hands. So it felt cheap. So
Need for Speed used to be good at telling really corny stories, but they were fun, right? They made you, like, that's why everyone still talks about Need for Speed Underground 1 and 2, and they still talk about Need for Speed Most Wanted, and to some extent Carbon, but those other three are like what people talk about the most, because it had the goofy storyline. It had the, like, overhyped bad guy that was like, you're going to come into my neighborhood and you're going to race me, brah, in my Mustang, brah. And it's just like, Now I just want to beat him because he's annoying.
Miraculous. That impression is so good. It's so accurate to those games. To your point, though, okay, so the newest Need for Speed Unbound, right?
Mm-hmm.
Leo and I sat down and we started playing that. And at the time, Leo's favorite car is a Lamborghini. His favorite color is gold. And the first car that you start playing with when you sit down to play Need for Speed Unbound is a yellow and black Lamborghini. And he thought it was the shit. He's so pumped. He's like, fuck, this is awesome. I love this. You know what happens about 10 minutes in? That car gets stolen from you.
So you got to start all over with this some cheap piece of shit. Yeah.
And he was like, what? He's like, do we still get to drive it? I'm like, nah, man, it's gone.
No, man, sorry.
He was like, fuck this. And if it didn't have me sitting there being like, listen, there's a chance for redemption. Just play through it, earn your way back. And then, then he got that car. And now he has this delayed sense of satisfaction that he's worked for. And it's amazing, right?
Right.
And if more people could just chill the fuck out and let themselves get there, right? They would feel the same way that my 8-year-old felt when he was freaking getting his Lamborghini back. And then we could have really good racing stories. The tire blows out. Guess what? That's real. Shit happens. Deal with it. Play on.
Yeah.
Well, they did that in Most Wanted. Like you were beating the main antagonist, and he sabotaged your car at the beginning of the race. So it runs out of oil, and you basically dry sump that car into non-existence. And it's like, now I know that there are people that actually have beat that race, and it like glitches the game out.
But what is one of the most beloved Need for Speed games in the entire franchise? Most Wanted.
Most Wanted.
I'm saying. Because it's a good story.
It's a great story.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a great story. That's a nice car. He's a king the side of it. The cutscenes in that, John, just watch the cutscenes. Go and find a YouTube video where they show the hours worth of cutscenes. It's hilarious. The new one, this is going to be so off topic. Talk about writing. Okay, let's talk about writing for a second, right? So you obviously the writers for Overtake, you're dealing with drivers in Formula 4 who are teenagers, by the way. So like the characters in the show are under 20. I think they're like 18 or 19.
No, they're like 14.
Show. No.
Yeah.
Probably the main guy.
The main guy, which is not uncommon. Formula 4 drivers are usually 14 years old. And remember, the blonde guy has been winning for like the last 3 years, and they keep wondering why he doesn't go to Formula 3.
And he's 19. The blonde guy is 19.
Right, because he's been doing it for years.
Yeah.
That's not
common. So it says our protagonist, Haruka, is a high school student. So probably
13 to 17.
Yep.
Yeah, somewhere in there.
And so you obviously are dealing with teenagers. Now, writing teenagers as an adult, probably not the easiest thing to do, because how do you capture the voice of a generation below you when you've never experienced the same things that they've experienced? You never experienced the world through their eyes, through their experiences. And I think this show, Overtake in particular, did a really good job in not making it seem that the writing was like these characters are hard to listen to, because the writing is bad where you don't believe they're 14. You just believe it's a bunch of people thinking that's how 14-year-olds talk. But they did it in such a way where it's actually, you couldn't really pinpoint how old the characters were, which was good, because that was not the focus of the show. And I want to talk about that, because let's talk about the writing in Need for Speed Unbound, Mike. When the protagonists in that show are like in their 20s, but you can tell that these are all like boomer written 20-year-olds, because even me, like I'm 34 years old. My wife's in medical school. A lot of the students that like are in study groups that come over to our house all the time, they're in their early 20s. So I know how they talk. I've listened to them talk. that's not how they talk. It's just like the way they portray emotion, and they're like, sup fam, flush bra, and it's like, no, nobody, I have never heard anybody say that.
Those are the words. They don't use it in that line of text.
So Vortex is in the chat. Thanks for jumping in. He's asking what we were talking about. We are discussing the anime Overtake. It's a racing anime. We're kind of straying. We're talking a lot about racing in general as well. You know, like how it's represented in the show and stuff like that. And so yeah, that's the discussion today.
And we were discussing how do you write 8 characters, right? Because I'm very much of the opinion that women can't write men and men can't write women. It's just that I hold a very strong opinion on that, because it is very obvious when you have a show or a movie where you have a female character or a woman character, and if they are over dramatized in one way or another, you're like, oh my god, this was not written by the same sex. Like, it's written by a man who thinks that's how a woman's going to react, or it's written by a woman who thinks this is how a man should be.
I think that's an amateur writer. I don't think that's a talented writer. You know, like you think of it like a comedian. You know, comedian, whoever they are, often the reason they're good, or part of it anyways, is because the way that they can distill everyday events in life into something that is so relatable. Like, they can see a truth to things, and sometimes pointing out that truth that's obvious to them, maybe, that you didn't think about, is what's like, oh yeah, that's funny. And I think a talented writer, you know, is someone that has empathy and can place themselves in a lot of people's shoes. So what's that?
I'm out.
You're out as a writer.
Get out of here.
Yeah.
John, not talkings.
I think what you're getting at, Tony, to me, I mean, at least this is how I would see it, is like, we have a lot of people today that don't have a lot of life experience, and they're thrust into jobs that require them to write stories that need to make a lot of people relate through life events. And so you have the Marvel movies of the world or whatever that are written by people fresh out of college that wish they were writing something hoity-toity, and instead they got stuck with the thing, you know, being cast as a writer to write this thing that will be on their resume, but it's beneath them. But they haven't lived any life. They went to high school and then college. They wasted their time to be a writer, and now they got a gig, but they haven't done anything. They barely have real relationships. Have they worked with people in the workspace? Have they met a variety of people and had to deal with them? Have they had kids and raised some of them? Have they traveled the world and, you know, like, struggled? The experiences are so limited that they can't empathize with other people and the opposite sex and with children, because they just don't have that in them. And so I think that I totally think that men can write women and women can write men, and it's borne out in the things that are most successful. But you have to have people that have experience with those things doing it.
That's true. That is very true. That's a good differentiator, because I would agree. If you are able to have those experiences in the human condition of loss, love, lament, all those. You probably have the ability to write those and do a good job getting that passed into the rest. So it's popped up on my screen here.
And I think you're right. I mean, I think you put that eloquently. But I think that also supports your hypothesis from earlier that the person that wrote this show, that wrote Overtake, them or somebody very close to the writing process must be close to this sport or one very similar. right? The technical aspects you can hire a consultant for and you can get right. You're still going to sometimes end up with Fast and the Furious lines where they, have to replace the piston rings he fried, and then they drive away later, just fine.
Danger to manifold.
Yeah, you're still going to get that if you don't know the world that you're writing about, because they're just words, right? So they throw keywords in. That's not what happened with this show. This show is coherent. And that's something that I think only comes with experience. You can write a show about competition and failure in sports, right? And how that impacts a person as an individual. But this is a little bit unique. They kind of nailed it from multiple perspectives too. So I feel like they were maybe channeling people that they really knew about this, or they at least studied enough characters in other motorsport movies.
Yeah. No, Vortex is talking in chat about how he's written a lot of characters, a variety of them in his homebrew D&D type campaigns, which is awesome. I love doing that as well. And some of his favorite characters, bringing up like
Edge of Tomorrow. That was a great character. Shout out War. That's a great character.
Yeah. A lot of people kind of coming around to
Hunter though.
Hunter, yeah. I've seen a fair bit of it, but I'm not sure that I know who he's referring to in that. But
is there
someone later, or maybe just not remembering the name?
Is there a resurgence of Edge of Tomorrow coming around? Because I'm seeing that like pop up a lot.
Yeah, I think it's like the Tom Cruise sort of thing, as with Top Gun, and then like making the big deal about his stunts and the last Mission Impossible, and then he's signing a deal with, I think, I forget if it's Warner Brothers. I think it's Warner Brothers to make a bunch of movies in the future and stuff like that. People have just like a newfound appreciation, talking about how the marketing was maybe bad and like more people should have seen it. It was really good, actually. So, yeah.
You know that P-51 Mustang he's working on in the Maverick movie?
Mm-hmm.
That's his Mustang. That's actually his plane.
That is really cool.
Yeah, he flies that. That's actually him flying it at the end of the movie.
Nice. Yeah, I wanted to revisit earlier my hypothesis that's probably based on not a lot other than like, I don't know, just cultural stuff I see or whatever, about why racing now. So we got a, idea that like this Netflix show, but see, that doesn't answer why the Netflix show exists. I think that, because I've heard repeatedly ad nauseum for a number of years now that the rates of kids getting their driver's license continues to fall.
Mm-hmm.
Kids don't want to drive. They're scared to drive. The idea of the responsibility of like having to go on the road and drive yourself somewhere and like you could get an accident, it's dangerous, all this sort of thing. It continues to be fewer and fewer of the youths interested in driving. And we have a generation now, probably our generation, that's making a lot of content, seeing and hearing that kind of thing, and then the emergence of electric vehicles, all these sort of things just throw in your head. Like one could be maybe a remembrance of either the good old days or important stories that have to deal with automobiles, so like a Ford versus Ferrari. It just makes you think of that. Or it's people that like don't want to lose this part of our culture since, the turn of the century. They're now like pushing this stuff forward. So it's like a response from a little bit older generation to like the worry that this is all going to be gone and no one's going to be interested in it. And so we start getting shows or whatever. And then it, if you get some celebrities out of it and it starts turning the tide, and maybe you get some more kids that are now interested. That's certainly how we, all of a sudden vinyl records come back. Like, where does that come from? Exactly. But
hipsters.
Yeah, right. But you see someone that appreciates a thing that we used to have, and they want a closer connection to music. Like an analog type of music is literally the music, a needle going up and down over a physical thing. It feels like it has more soul. You can compare that to the idea of like a watch versus a smartwatch, a thing that has literal gears that have to turn and stay on time versus just circuits. Or you have a car that has a combustion engine versus now a computer on the road with a big battery. Like there are things that have more soul and meaning, and like I think it's something that humans relate to, that once those things start going away, people kind of realize that there was something important there. And they realize, some people do. And so that to me is maybe why we have a resurgence of the automobile kind of show or story, because there is something more. I mean, the vehicle is the freedom machine. It's the symbol of freedom. You have places where for centuries people were stuck with their lot in life because they couldn't go anywhere. Try going 10 miles in one direction. It was an arduous thing. You might not make it. Then all of a sudden you have an automobile. You go across the country in 2 days. You travel great distances. You can leave your lot in life. It is the symbol of America and of freedom and of autonomy. And it will be sad if we lose a lot of that. And that's, to me, the way it's looking like it's gone. They want to keep, idea of 20-minute cities, keep everybody in one spot. The idea of like, we're just all ride share. We'll just like have everybody, automated car come around and pick everybody up and then drop everybody off. That's losing freedom and autonomy. And I don't know. So I hope that this is sort of a response to that sort of cultural shift.
There is a downturn in teenagers' desire to get their license, but I also think it's a bit overhyped. We have a tendency to assume that the bullshit that happens within a large city is representative of the rest of our country anyways.
Sure.
I would love to go to a farm town and find out, because I don't know, are the kids there still wanting to drive, right? When you do have that split, when you do have that gap, right? In the city, you've got a lot of adults for generations who haven't had any desire or need to have a car, right? They might have gotten their license because that was just the regiment that you went through, but they don't actually utilize it. And that's fine if that's the way that you want to live, if that's how you want to be. But like, I know lots of kids who still want, for every person that I hear that had no desire to get their license, well, it turns out that person was a particularly lazy and hugely reliant on other people in all facets of their life. It just happened to manifest in the fact that, well, I don't want to get a driver's license because, like you said, they didn't want the responsibility, and freedom is responsibility, right? But for every one of those, I know 2 or 3 that were just like me and like could barely sleep the night before the driver's test because they were so excited to go do it. My kid loves go-kart racing. Put him in anything with wheels. Before he loved go-kart racing, you know what he loved to do? He loved to drive the riding lawnmower. Like just anything with wheels, he just wants to drive. There's still people like that. But I don't think that's the narrative that people want you to hear, right? Because I think, there's a desire to take that away and convolute it and make it harder to drive, and want to convince you that it's not necessary. So,
I'm so glad War brought this up.
Yeah, I was going to ask him what it's like in Germany. Yeah. So Vortex in the chat, I don't have a license. I don't want one. I don't need one. But this argument is heavily dependent on what location we are talking about. I live in Germany and public transport is very widely available. So for me, I'm only really reliant on me or my bike.
So that's analogous to the New York situation. So you're right, Vortex. Like it is reliant on location. And the United States, right? We have 330 million people in this country alone, and it spans a space that covers most, other continents, essentially, to some degree. Same with Canada. You throw all of North America in, and it's one of the largest there, right? I mean, it's huge, minus Russia and Africa, which are absolutely gigantic. It's a lot of ground to cover, right? And the public transportation is very different. So if you do live in a tight city here that more resembles, a smaller place, there's a lot of folks like that. I'd say you're missing out on a physical sensation that is fantastic. And so it might not be a need, and you don't have the desire, maybe. I can't say, whether or not that's reasonable or not. That's complete personal preference. But there is a sensation to driving that it's a matter of the freedom that comes with it, but there's a physics pull on it as well. Your senses are overloaded in a good way, right? We become really desensitized. It amazes me that people get behind the wheel of a car, drive 60 miles an hour, and start texting and shit, and start eating and doing anything but driving, right? Yeah. You're going 60 miles an hour. Your senses, our bodies are amazing at being able to adapt to it, but you're doing an amazing thing. And if people just hone in on that, it's a lot of fun. Like, even if it's not a need, damn, it's just a lot of fun. And that's just driving normal.
This is also, though, I think war brings up a really good point. War is from Germany. I have had so many conversations about car culture and the difference between European car culture and American car culture. And Mike and John, you guys said this earlier, and it's the idea of freedom in the U.S. The car, the automobile is freedom to a person. It's the ability to go anywhere at any point in time. And what I think why Europe doesn't really view the automobile as the same way, or as a very small sect that might, is that, let's face it, Europe's got just a hell of a public transit system. I mean, they really do. I have traveled to Europe many times, and it's astonishing the public transit that they have there. I mean, you can get in between countries very easily via train. You can do it via, I know there's like a ferry canal system. You can do it subways. You can do it in, L train, stuff like that. They have them all over, and it's very easy to get around. And it's very cheap to get around in Europe. Not so much here, though. So to Brian, Mike, your point, it's very difficult to travel in the U.S. if you do not have a car, because we don't have that structured. I can't. If we are talking this alone, but I am personally.
I'll read a second. You can finish your point. I do want to. I didn't mean to try to have to cover up your face.
Sorry, I just threw that up there. It is really, really hard, and that is because the U.S. sprawls a lot. We build out. We very rarely build up. So the space between cities is massive. We have those 20-minute cities, like Mike was saying, the New York effect. You could actually stay and live in New York your entire life, and there are people who have never left New York. They do not know any other part of the U.S. They've been in New York the entire time,
and those people
can get around just fine. Those people vote. No, but people like me. So I've lived in multiple countries. I've lived in multiple states. If I didn't have a car, I'd shoot myself. Like it's really hard because I have to travel so far.
I'm gonna put here's the damper we just been talking about to that argument is Japan. Japan is small, relatively. Japan does build up, and yet Japan does have a strong car culture. I watch a lot of videos, just like people walking down the street in Japan, and it's amazing the awesome cars that people cram into their little available parking spots between every different, on all those like neighborhoods and stuff. And that's rurally or in the city, and their public transportation is probably, maybe there's someone better. I don't know. As far as I'm aware, it's the best public transportation system in the world. Like the timeliness is incredible. It's just, set your watch to the train coming kind of thing. And it's still there. And I think it's because there is a culture in Japan of when things are seen as an art, they last. When something has, again, maybe have a spiritual connection of some kind, it lasts. It's like photography. You can go to Japan and go to an electronics store and you can buy a ton of different cameras. Take your pick of cameras, DSLRs, point and shoots, you name it, retro cameras, like old film cameras that have been restored, you name it, those things still exist there and are sold. Digital music players, the iPod or other variations of it still exist. They are slow to move on from things that are deemed important for one reason or another. And sometimes those things to everybody else is just like, we'll move on because something else is more convenient. And so I don't know. I think that they're an exception to the rule of like a convenient public transportation is a reason to give up the autonomy and the it's still the freedom of your own personal automobile.
Sure. They're using cars as a form of expression, which they do heavily. But the thing that's funny in Vortex, I don't mean to offend. That's not the intent with this next comment. But I'd actually rather hear your feedback on it. Germany feels like the polar opposite when you describe the aspect of Japan, because in Germany, everything is precise. I mean, listen, my favorite brand is Porsche. Favorite brand by far, but there is no art. There is no passion. There is no sexy. Porsche is the tool. It is the sharpest blade. It is the best collection of what works. And in some sense, what does not work, but everything is so perfectly done with a focus of win, be best, win. Don't care what it looks like, win. Like that's just it's a different aspect altogether. And I don't know how much of the rest of Germany is like that, how much of the rest of the culture is like that. I don't know anything about it whatsoever. I'm completely talking through the lens of the automobile. So maybe that has some correlation to it. But goddamn, they make the best cars in the world. There's no sexiness to it. There's no art to it. Like the 959 was just an exercise in all things technology.
The 959.
I love it. I don't know why. I must think ugly things are beautiful because it's one of my favorite looking cars, but people say it's one of the ugliest things to come out because it was literally a 911 that they just went, chuck it in a wind tunnel. Let's see what happens. And don't give a shit about what it looks like. That's it.
Well, that's where my phrase where I say that the best car in the world, if I had to do it, would be engineered by the Germans, designed by the Italians, manufactured by the Japanese, and sold by Americans.
I mean, that would be, it'd be amazing. I am curious, like, John, you brought up the responsibility part about it. Mm-hmm. And then Vortex seemed to corroborate that a little bit with his comment here. And seems like a very intelligent person here. What throws me is the sense of responsibility being a deterrent from wanting to take advantage of it. That's a quality or a perspective that I don't understand.
I didn't read his full text. It popped up and down too fast.
Well, it's insightful. It's insightful. Read it.
I'm going to read it.
Right. So sadly, I cannot involve myself really in the argument if we are talking about the U.S. alone. But I am personally really do not desire the physical sensation, as this sensation is getting very, very, very easily overshadowed by the amount of responsibilities I will have on the road, for the car, for myself, my driver's license, and we're not even talking about all of the cost that comes with it. I don't have anyone currently who can just finance me such a driving license or even a car.
Yeah, and then, some areas of Europe, it's insanely expensive to own a car.
Right.
Insanely expensive.
And listen, we're fortunate enough to not have, fucking race the things irresponsibly. Like, I get it. I'm coming from a privileged position on that regard. But and you make good points, Vortex, about the responsibility. You list off the responsibilities that are involved with it. I just never, I haven't been shied away by that. I've wanted to take that on. Like, that makes it my own to me. And then his most recent comment.
I think
I just had to say it
Tony's
in my head. I'm like, oh my God, he's right.
Yeah. Vortex says, but fun note is very interesting that you guys call, Mercedes with 3 different pronunciations of the letter E.
Mercedes.
We say everything wrong.
Mercedes? I mean, that'd be like a Spanish
I'm
name.
To say it
Mercedes.
And I can't. Mercedes.
Don't.
Mercedes is how you'd say it in like Spanish.
You both sound ridiculous. Knock it off.
Now I'm not gonna be able to say words.
How are we supposed to say it? America says Mercedes. Spanish would be Mercedes.
Listen, I say Porsche correctly, so I get a pass. Okay.
No, he says Porsche instead of Porsche because saying it Porsche, it's a longer time to say it, which means there's more people that can hear you talking about your Porsche.
Jaguar.
Mercedes. I mean, that does sound right. That does sound better.
Mercedes. Mercedes. Where's the? I want to know where like the emphasis is now. Mercedes.
Well, there's also Citroen. So do you pronounce it Citroen or Citron?
Citroen.
I pronounce it Citroen. And then there's Peugeot.
Let's see. Vortex says, let's see. But yeah, absolutely true. I can travel to any city here in Germany for an entire month with a German ticket, which costs about 49 euros a month. When it was tested, this cost was absurdly low for only 9 euros a month. And take note, you can travel with this to any city throughout entire Germany without extra costs. So look, everybody can disagree with me. It's fine. You can all disagree. To me, the idea of this is we don't want you driving, and we can have public appearances for this. We can have public reasons that we tell everybody we don't want you driving, and then we have private reasons. Like we have our reasons, but we're not what we tell the public. We want you in public transport, so we will subsidize public transport. Your Germany ticket, I'm sure, your Deutschland ticket is a great deal because you don't pay for it. The 49 euros a month is going to be a fraction of what it costs to maintain and run and employ the people to run that system. The rest of it is you're coming from your wallet tax money anyways. And then you pay for fuel, for petrol by the liter, and half of that is tax. So we give you one thing and we penalize you for attempting the other. Make the licensing fees high. Taxes on tires, astronomical. We don't even maintain the roads well if we want. Whatever it is, put all the barriers up. And so that to me is it's hurting the possibility of a flourishing car culture because those that are in power don't want that to be a thing. Go away with that. Ride sharing, public transit. And you can just see it by what they pay for you to take and what they punish you to take for taking.
It's a big cultural difference. I mean, that is a constant cultural.
What the fuck is that?
What the hell are you? What did you just drink out of?
What are you doing?
Am I drinking out of? See, you can put. It has the time on it. So if you drink it throughout the day. So
I drink an hour. So you drink your hour of water.
Yeah. But yeah.
The biggest political party. This ticket is fantastic for me. Dude, if I lived in a city that had like a $60 a month and I could get to any city within Minneapolis or within Minnesota, I'd take it. Like
that's the point. I mean,
I would take it.
That's
I'd still like to drive, but I would totally take it if I could get up to Fargo or something for not that much time.
Wait, what would you take if you get to Fargo in how much time?
If for like $50 a month, you could get a train ticket that could take you to any city in the United States for $50 a month.
Do you know how long it would take? You can't stop when you want. You can't stop when you want. You can't like have your car stereo listening to whatever you want. You're not controlling the temperature, and then it takes forever. Anytime I've tried to like, what am I missing here? You want to go? You want to train from wherever to Fargo? That just sounds like prison.
Well, that's Fargo.
This is like the Orient Express, and it's like we're having caviar and stuff along the way, and they got a bedroom and all that stuff.
To War's point, yes, it is better to fly because I had to commute from Minneapolis to Washington, D.C. once a week, and Nicole had to do it for her grad program. But we used to fly into BWI, and you could take the Amtrak train from Washington, D.C.'s Union Station all the way to Penn Station up in Baltimore, and take that northwest corridor. Sorry, northeast corridor that would run up that way. I will say this. I would much rather take the Amtrak from Washington, D.C. up to Baltimore than drive from Washington, D.C. up to Baltimore. That's a shitty drive. That is a really shitty drive. Plus, Baltimore's just trash to drive around in, so.
But I'm not of that personality.
I'm using it as a subsidy for my travel. Like, I want a car. So I'm still going to have a car because driving locally, getting around, like going to different places when I want to go there. But if I'm like, I have to get to Baltimore, I have to get there today. I don't want to like have to deal with parking in Baltimore. I don't want to have to deal with like getting in and out of Baltimore during rush hour. I'm taking the train from Washington, D.C. to Baltimore.
I'm not saying there's not scenarios,
No, that's what I'm saying.
Especially when you're out of town, whatever. Like when I was in Japan, I'm not driving anywhere. I'm not getting a license and driving someplace.
I fucking would.
Well, if you're there for 2 weeks, I'm not doing it.
I rented a car in Italy just because I wanted to drive Italian roads and I didn't want somebody else. And God damn, that was fun.
So much fun in Italy to drive.
So fun. And that was fun in Italy. That was for, I think 7 days. It was amazing. Listen, there's some people value it. Some people don't. Some people romanticize it and some people don't. I romanticize driving to an incredible degree because of what you are doing, what you are capable of with it, because of the freedom that I believe that it gives me. Fortunate enough to make that argument, I suppose. That is true. But there's just nothing. I mean, if anybody ever wanted to be Tony Stark, just get in a car and actually pay attention to what the fuck is happening around you. You're Tony Stark, man. I mean, you're in a single vehicle, right? That's just wrapped around you. You're going faster than any human being was ever meant to go. You are feeling the G-forces. You could barrel through a whole lot of shit unharmed. To some degree, it's a ludicrous weapon as well, but it is all degrees of freedom and entertainment and self-expression, in so many ways. So I can't stand seeing another car on the side of the road or on the road that looks the exact same as the one I'm in. I hate it.
Yeah. I'm not good about that. I make comments, Ashley, that are not nice. They're like just, I don't mean them, I guess, but I say them nonetheless. I'm like, oh, look, there's another Explorer that's the same color as mine, and then I'm like looking, oh, they have the sport package, not platinum. Peasants. I don't care,
That's different. That's different because, about like 350 feet down the road, there's going to be a platinum one too. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, John's going to come batting up with his F-150, the number one car sold in the U.S. outside the Camry.
Yeah. I mean, I'll put some cool stickers on it, right? That's there it is. Cool stickers,
although,
bro.
The one thing I will back up here, and I wonder if War might have an opinion on this. Having been to Europe multiple times, people in Europe should not be buying F-150s and Ram 1500s.
I didn't.
They don't
not, are
fit.
they?
They are, and they do not fit in those roads.
Bugatti Veyron. Chiron these days. Yeah. Yes, Chiron these days. Good choice.
I think the Veyron would be more visceral. I think the Chiron is more refined, but more powerful.
But look, there you go, right? We're talking about Volkswagen. I mean, you're talking about Volkswagen, aka Porsche, aka Audi, aka Lamborghini, in a sense. I mean, you're halfway there on your dream, Tony, with Lamborghini. That is a German-built car assembled by Italians. Congratulations, or designed by Italians. Mm-hmm. I mean, but that's the epitome. That the Bugatti was, let's just see what we can make by doing it the best, with science. There's no art to that car. Sorry, there's not. It looks the way it looks because that was the most efficient wind tunnel design based off of the engine that they shoved into it. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing. Dude, it broke all of the records. And it broke all of the records. I think it was Richard Hammond was driving one. And he was doing a high-speed test in it. He said that after you go 230 miles an hour, you actually have to be cautious. Because when you slow down to 30 miles an hour and you think that you're slowing down to 30 miles an hour, you think you're almost stopped. He's like, I was ready to get out of the car and I was still going 30 miles an hour because the speed difference is so huge. I mean, that's what the Bugatti does. That's what German engineering gets you. And it's remarkable.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's my language right there, buddy. The Bentley. I love myself, my big old cruisers.
Yes,
Bentley
sir.
Continental.
Bentley.
See, we got some car culture in Vortex.
Yeah, everybody's got a little bit in them. They just don't know it yet.
Got a little bit. You just got to pluck it out of them. And here it is. It's the Bentley Continental because fuck your neighbor's Mercedes S-Class. That's why you buy a Bentley.
I do like this interesting talk about like German being like the efficiency, and just like what's most effective. And there can be like an unintentional art to that too.
It's
sometimes
the art of over-engineering.
It's like something that's utilitarian. Like a lot of people like a utilitarian sort of look. Mm-hmm. And that is, that's what we have here. My favorite kitchen knife is like a Wusthof, and it's very basic, but it's durable as hell, and it cuts really great, and it feels good in the hand. But we have these Japanese knives that are way fancier and way more intricately designed. But I find myself going to like the workhorse Wusthof all the time.
I love Wusthof. Yeah. I only have Wusthof cooking knives.
To your point, some of the sexiest shapes of cars happen to be very aerodynamic. So smooth edges, low drag. I should say that. They are not necessarily aerodynamic. They're very low drag, and that is super effective, right? When you are talking rounded edges with that allows a laminar flow much better than really sharp edged designs. And yeah, it works out.
Well, speaking
the Audi R8, I love the Audi R8. I don't think I would ever want to own an Audi R8 just because it's an Audi, and I don't have recommended maintenance money when it comes to an Audi.
It is a nice, very good looking car.
I love that car, but oh my God, I've heard it's the biggest pain in the ass to own.
Well, talking about art here, a thing that has a lot of it in it is Overtake.
Yeah. Oh my God, I forgot why we were here.
That all is all art to compose this show. And I just wanted to get any sort of, final thoughts on the show. I know there's a lot of places we could have gone yet, talked more specifically about different characters and stuff, but like overall, anything that must be addressed that we really haven't talked about. And I guess, yeah, if you are really looking for a season 2 or more shows like this or whatever else you gotta get off your chest, we'll start with Mike.
No, like I said earlier, I don't really need a season 2. I would be happy to just rewatch this season and feel completely fulfilled. And I'm a little hesitant, a little concerned with a season 2, because how do you capture that magic? Like, was this lightning in a bottle, or do they really have something that they can make an equally good second season, if not better? If they do, I'll be astonished and very, very pleased. But if they never even try it, then it's a great win. I hope that it inspires more people to try this. I hope that this absolutely beats MF Ghost into the fucking dirt and we never see the light of day of that stupid ass show again. That's coming from a person who wanted to love that. I watched 5 seasons or whatever it is. I watched all of Initial D from front to back, including the movies, in preparation for MF Ghost, and loved every minute of it. And somehow they found a way to shit all over it. So this is the formula. This is what I want to see. And if it's from the same people and a totally different story in a totally different direction, that would be amazing as well. But it proves that motor racing is a great vehicle for storytelling. And yeah, I hope we stick on this trajectory.
Cool. Tony?
Yeah, I think this just knocked it out of the park. This is, like I said, my first foray into anime drama. And I think this was really good. This kind of maybe opened up my eyes to be like, maybe there's some other shows that might be able to exemplify the human condition as well as this show did. But I think this show is just, like you said, Mike, this might be lightning in a bottle. They do a season 2. I really hope they take the same care that they did with this one. I hope it's not one of those, it was popular, so let's just quickly throw a season 2 out to make sure that doesn't fall by the wayside. I really hope they put time into it. I'm excited about animation style is phenomenal. I thought animation was great. I thought the transition from track animation to person animation was a lot smoother than Initial D. But yeah, I liked it.
Not a single piece of ass hanging out. It was great.
Awesome.
Wait, you want your ass hanging out? Wow.
It's distracting to my story, Jonathan. If I want to watch that stuff, there's specific sites for me to do it. I don't need to be worried about where I'm at on a plane when it happens.
Right. There's that orange and black site that everyone likes to go to.
Uh-huh. We didn't really talk about the animation too much or the art style too much. That's a bummer.
Yeah. Well, I can mention, I guess a little of my thoughts there. I think animation was just clean. Like the show wasn't over directed, there was, as you called out before, Mike, there's moments where you see someone clench their hand or there's physical cues, but they're not, it's just not an overly stylized show. It's going for realism. And so a lot of that doesn't stand out. And at times it might be what's helping you forget that it's animated at all. That it's just like going down the path of, and the art style is just like a respectable, clean anime style. They're not overly stylized, but they're not going for realism that we must have every detail and we have, trouble making them look nice. So I thought it was just a nice, even balance. And I think it makes sense that we really didn't call that out. Like the times that the animation was the camera angle in like the last episode where it was zoomed around the racetrack. You know, that was like where all of a sudden it stood out, and it did because it was different. You know, I think there's one animation moment that I wrote in my notes that really stood out that was different because stylistically it didn't fit with the rest of the show. Our track girl got a nosebleed, bursting nosebleed. It really didn't fit with it. Would be commonplace in a lot of anime, and it really wasn't a thing that would make sense here because it was taking away that realism. I enjoyed the moment. It was a surprise, but it did go against the attitude of the rest of the show. So it's like I think for me it was a good ride. Being from the outside perspective, it's not a show I would have chosen without Mike's suggestion, but they handled everything really well, and you get sucked into the human drama. So I am okay without season 2, but it's a show that I feel comfortable that if there is, that it will be done well. So I think that I'd be down for a season 2. And we're talking about dramas, like I have this list of some nominated film or shows in the drama category. I just have to look through some of them. Vortex would be interesting if you've heard of some of them. As Oshinoko, that was a huge one. Everybody talking about that. Ancient Magus' Bride, that was in season 2 of that. Undead Murder Farce, Vinland Saga is a popular one. Buddy Daddies, Insomniacs After School, that was one I was kind of interested in. Mushiko Tensei, Jobless Reincarnation, and My Happy Marriage. Those are the other nominees. So if anyone's, we've been talking a lot about shonen. If anyone's interested in other kinds of shows, maybe we start looking at some of these for, we can decide if maybe Overtake is overtaken by one of these other shows that's actually really excellent. So
for sure. And I think before we close out here, I think War wants to recommend some himself from the drama category.
Yeah, he said Oshinoko, but he'd been recommended. But I may recommend. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, let us know what you think. Did not watch Oshinoko, but we started. Ashley and I started it. Ashley really liked it. Actually, I had trouble wanting to really continue with it, but it is beautifully done. Vortex, while you come up with a few suggestions in like the drama category, I want to show everybody Mike's channel here. It's all about the racing.
Shameless plug.
So, go ahead and let everybody know about your channel, Mike.
One of these days, you're going to have to show the Laguna video because that's the coolest one.
Okay.
It's a YouTube channel that's just me going through. There you go. That's the one. Me going through the process of going from doing regular track days with my little Miata to trying to compete in a series called Grid Life and go all over the country and try and run people down and make a little Miata go real, real fast. So
that little Miata goes real fast.
He's just getting there. This next year is going to be wild.
And you said this is your mock-up you sent me. It's what you're going for here.
So I wanted to channel my inner Need for Speed self and the types of graphics that I used to make on cars in Need for Speed, because all of my cars in the games were always outlandish, and then all of my cars in real life have been very subdued. And since this is just a track-only car, getting trailered to and from, I just wanted to be ridiculous with it. And I think I hit that. And everybody I've shown it to so far has been like, that's a thing.
It's going to stand out.
I haven't seen it. Did you send it to me, Mike?
I haven't yet, but I will. So the car is called Track Mouse. There's a joke, there's a story behind all of that, with me literally ending up somehow with a mouse in the car at the racetrack, on my way to the racetrack as well. And so it ended up being Track Mouse.
Nice.
And now it is going from, it fit that moniker very, very well. because it's a small little car with no power. Now we're going to have some actual power within the rules. So now it's going to be a small little car with a lot of power. And so it's not so mousy anymore.
Cool.
Track rat.
Yep.
I actually reached out to our decal person today to get some pricing for our stickers for the podcast. So
very cool.
We'll get those printed probably next week. So
awesome. Super excited. So you'll see there's going to be it's a full-on livery for those stickers to go onto now. It's not just going to be a sticker on the car. It'll be a part of it.
Oh, wow. Cool. Very cool. All right. Well, we look forward to sharing that with everybody and your progress as you go along. If anybody feels like they are looking to sponsor an awesome driver, put together I want to see Mike in an ad for a sports drink, like in Overtake. This is what I want to see. So,
that would be awesome, but I think they're going to want a better looking person for that. Maybe if I keep my helmet on.
All right, and before we wrap up, let's get Vortex's recommendations. He says they vary completely. So, Mushiko Tensei, that one was on the drama list, I believe. Mob Psycho 100, Osama Ranking. Is that the Ranking of Kings? Yeah, that must be Ranking of Kings. That's Japanese title here, I suppose. 2 Year Eternity. Revisions, and now my earbud just died. Gotta switch headphones.
All right, so now you have non-drama recommendations.
Let's see. K-On. Okay, that's an older one. Anohana. And then Manga Real Life. Okay, so I've heard of
type some of these out.
Bunch of that. K-On would be an interesting one to do because it is a classic. And I've never seen it. I think it's very musical based and young kind of girl band sort of thing, I believe. Mob Psycho 100, that's more along the shonen lines. Osama Ranking, that one everybody raves about. I think that was 2 seasons ago. Everyone raves about it. It looks not good to me at all. The art style is not. It does not draw my interest in the least.
Let me see the art style.
But
John
everyone says it's so good. So
that doesn't mean he won't watch it. That just means he's his first impression's not there. Vortex. He told me he wouldn't be interested in Overtake either until I wouldn't shut the hell up about it.
It says quite dark despite the art style. Exactly, that's what I've heard. It's like it pulls you in with this cuteness and then it just rips your heart from your chest. Some of that. Ooh. So
like Pal World?
No, not like Pal World. Not like Pal World. Yeah. So some good stuff, good recommendations there. We're gonna keep going. We'll see what's next. Anyone can find something that they're super passionate about that's outside the box. We'll take a look at that. I think will be a lot of people seem like they're watching Delicious in Dungeon. So
Netflix.
Yep.
Yeah, it's good. It's really good.
So probably be there. Blue Lock, Vortex says that's a sports anime. So
I'll check.
There's a million things, but everybody, just find the thing that they're passionate about. Try things. If they don't like something, let's move on. That's a lot to pick from. So, but I appreciate Vortex. I appreciate you being here in chat and contributing intelligently to the conversation. I appreciate that very much, and glad you're here and following. And if Vortex, if you start. I looked at your channel on Twitch. It looked like you stream a little bit. So if you're streaming more or something like that, everybody go ahead and follow him. Vortex_HD. MJ Honeybee is our friend. You should follow her on Twitch as well. She does Dead by Daylight streams. We'll hopefully get some more gaming streams in here. On YouTube, it's confusing now. We have a separate Ohayou anime channel. Apart from Popcast on the Rocks. So on Twitch, you're going to see Popcast Rocks, and everything is going to be under that same banner. But on YouTube, for the algorithm, we have channels split up. They got the podcast on the rocks for the regular podcast. We've got Ohayou Anime for the anime stuff. We've got our gaming channel, Gamecast on the rocks. So it's more work to subscribe to the places, but you can subscribe to the things you're interested in, and it's not going to be just all of it. So that's how we're rocking here. And Mike and Tony, I appreciate you guys very much for being here and for the great conversation about Overtake and racing in general. So
thanks for indulging us.
Always a pleasure.
You bet. All right. Until next time, probably doing our anniversary stream on Monday. We'll see you all then.